Kade Bennett was halfway through juggling 3 neon-colored balls when a little girl in a unicorn dress squealed with joy. And he grinned wide enough to forget for a second that his shoes had holes in them. "Again, do it again," she shouted, clapping her hands. "You got it, princess," Kade said, tossing the balls back in the air, his eyes darting to make sure his own daughter, Violet, was still sitting safely on the picnic blanket a few feet away, sipping juice and giggling at the balloon dog in her lap. This wasn't his usual gig. But when you were a single dad with overdue rent and a daughter who needed new shoes, you didn't say no to entertaining at a 6-year-old's birthday party. Especially when the pay was more than decent for an afternoon of face paint, magic tricks, and balloon animals. He didn't know the woman who hired him. The message had come through a local mom group, and he'd showed up in his wrinkled clown vest and patched pants, ready to play the part. Easy job, he'd thought. Until he saw her. She was standing near the catering table, her arms crossed, watching him with this unreadable expression. Her dress was simple, flawless, expensive-looking. Her heels didn't touch the grass thanks to the wooden platform laid out just for her. She didn't belong at a suburban backyard party. She looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. And when their eyes met just for a second, it felt like the entire party went on mute. Kade blinked, then quickly turned his attention back to the kids. He wasn't here to stare at the woman in the designer dress. She was probably the birthday girl's aunt or something, or worse, married. But she wasn't. Elara Anderson hadn't planned on staying long. She'd planned this party herself. Of course, her executive assistant had offered, but Elara liked doing things for her niece. It was the one time she could switch off her CEO brain and just be the fun aunt. But then she saw him. The man in the beat-up sneakers and homemade magician's cape, doing everything he could to make a bunch of kids laugh. He was funny, warm, and completely unaware that he had her full attention. His laugh was deep and real. His eyes lit up every time he looked at the little girl sitting on the blanket, the one who looked exactly like him. She sipped her sparkling water and kept watching. "Elara," her sister whispered, nudging her, "are you even listening?" "Ahem. I said the kids love him. I think Violet's got a crush," she teased. Elara's gaze lingered on the man's smile. "She's not the only one." He was different. There was something in his energy that felt honest, like he wasn't trying to be impressive or important. Like he had no idea he was the most captivating person here. After the party, while the kids bounced in the inflatable castle and parents started gathering up gift bags, Elara walked over. He was crouched beside Violet, tying off a balloon bracelet on her wrist. "That's a beautiful bracelet," Elara said softly. Kade looked up and nearly dropped the balloon pump. Thanks," she picked the colors. Violet beamed. "Daddy made it for me." Elara's eyes flicked between them. "You're her dad." "Yeah, just me and her," he said, standing slowly. "I'm Kade." "Elara." She shook his hand, warm, calloused, and felt something flicker in her chest. "You did a great job today," she added. "The kids loved you." "Thank you. I needed this gig more than I'd like to admit." She tilted her head. "You do this full time." "Not really. I do odd jobs, construction when I can get it, driving, party stuff when it comes up." He scratched the back of his neck. "Whatever pays the bills." Her gaze softened. "And Violet?" "She's my world. She's 5, starting kindergarten this fall. Work around her schedule." Elara looked over at the girl, who was now trying to stack cupcakes. "She's lucky to have you." Something about the way she said it made his chest tighten, not with embarrassment, with hope. "You don't seem like you're from around here," he said. "I'm not," she admitted. "I'm based in the city, just here for my niece's birthday." So back to skyscrapers and boardrooms tomorrow." Elara smiled, but didn't answer. I'd like to keep in touch, just in case another party comes up. Kade blinked. Yeah, sure, here, have a card. Well, it's handwritten, but... He handed her a small, slightly creased card with his name and number. She took it carefully, tucking it into her clutch. As the sun dipped lower and guests started leaving, Elara watched Kade pack up his things while keeping one eye on Violet, who clung to his leg. She didn't usually feel anything for strangers. She didn't trust easily, not in her world. But this man, his laugh, his warmth, the way he looked at his daughter like she was the greatest thing on earth, it cracked something open in her. And he had no idea who she was. He didn't know she ran a billion-dollar tech company, that she had 3 homes in 3 cities, that her face was on the cover of Forbes 2 months ago. He just saw her as a woman at a party. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough. As Kade lifted Violet into his arms and headed for his beat-up sedan, Elara stood by the gate, watching them go. She didn't know what she'd just felt. But it scared her. And thrilled her. Because she hadn't smiled like this in a long, long time. 2 days later, Kade was elbow-deep in a busted kitchen sink, trying to coax a stubborn pipe loose with a wrench that had seen better decades. He'd taken the plumbing job last minute after the neighbor's cousin's friend mentioned her faucet was leaking. Word of mouth was survival when you didn't have a website, a license, or time to market yourself. "Daddy," Violet called from the hallway, "there's a lady knocking." Kade wiped his hands on a threadbare towel and stepped over a stray toy unicorn. "Did she say who she is?" "She said your name like she knows you." Kade opened the door and froze. Elara stood there, no heels this time, just clean white sneakers and jeans that probably cost more than his last paycheck. She held a large paper bag in one hand and a hesitant smile on her face. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said. He blinked. No, you're not, just wrestling the plumbing. You found me." "Your card had an address on it." "Right, I forgot I scribbled that down." Violet peeked from behind his leg. "Is she the party lady?" Elara crouched down. "Hi, Violet. I brought muffins. Do you like blueberry?" Violet glanced up at her dad. Kade nodded slightly. "Yes, I like them." Elara handed her the bag. "There's 2 in there, one for you, one for your dad." Kade stepped aside. "You want to come in? It's not much, but..." "I'd like that." The living room was small, the sofa faded, the coffee table uneven, but everything was clean and lived in. Violet plopped onto a cushion and began unwrapping a muffin with careful fingers. "I didn't expect you to show up at my door," Kade said, watching Elara take in the space. "I didn't plan on it either," she admitted. "But I had a free afternoon and, I don't know, I kept thinking about that party. You made it feel like more than just another birthday." He crossed his arms, the wrench still in his hand. "You drove all the way out here just to say that." "No," she said. "I came because I wanted to ask you something." Kade raised a brow. "All right." "I run a mentorship program through my company. We pair small business owners and independent contractors with people who can help them grow: designers, marketers, legal advisors. No strings attached. I think you'd be a perfect fit." He stared at her for a beat. "Why?" "Because you're clearly good at what you do. And I think you deserve better tools than duct tape and borrowed ladders." He rubbed his jaw. Not sure fit the profile of someone corporate types would line up to help. She met his eyes. "You don't know what people will do until you give them the chance." He hesitated. Behind him, Violet was humming to herself, swinging her legs as she devoured the muffin. "I appreciate the offer," he said, "but I've never taken a handout in my life." "It's not a handout," she replied. "It's a step toward something more stable. You'd still be your own boss. You just have people in your corner." He narrowed his gaze. "Why do you care what happens to me?" There was a pause. Then she said, "Because I don't meet a lot of people who are genuine anymore. And when I do, I don't want to walk away from them." Kade's throat tightened. He looked down at the wrench in his hand, then back at her. "You always go around recruiting plumbers with blueberry muffins." "Only the ones who moonlight as party entertainers and raise amazing daughters." He laughed despite himself. "You're not what I expected." "Neither are you." Violet wandered over, clutching the second muffin. "Daddy, can she come again someday?" Kade glanced at Elara. "That depends. You planning on disappearing after today?" She held his gaze. "No, I'm not." Outside, a car honked in the distance. Inside, the silence between them felt full, not awkward, not heavy, just full of something neither of them could name yet. Elara stood. "Should go, let you get back to the pipes." "Yeah," Kade said, voice low. "Thanks for the muffins and for thinking of me." She stepped to the door, then turned. "If you decide to take me up on the offer, there's a networking event Friday night. Small business showcase. You might meet someone who needs a magician or a handyman." He scratched the back of his neck. "Do I need a jacket?" She smiled. "Just come as yourself." He nodded once. "All right, maybe I'll see you there." As she left, Violet tugged on his sleeve. "She's pretty." He looked out the window, watching Elara disappear down the sidewalk. "Yes, baby, she is." And for the first time in a long while, something in him stirred. A flicker of possibility, not just for work, but for something else entirely. The moment Kade stepped through the glass doors of the downtown event hall, he realized two things. One, he was wildly underdressed in his cleanest flannel and dark jeans. And two, he had absolutely no idea what he was doing here. He'd left Violet with his neighbor, a retired kindergarten teacher who adored her and owed him a favor after he fixed her porch steps last weekend. It was the first time he'd gone anywhere without her in months, and now he was standing under a chandelier the size of his living room, surrounded by people who looked like they'd had their suits tailored in Paris. A soft voice caught his ear. "You came." Kade turned, and there she was. Elara wore a navy jumpsuit that looked effortless and sharp all at once, her hair pulled back in a way that made her cheekbones look like they'd been carved by steady hands. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She just did. "I almost didn't," he admitted. "Spent 20 minutes debating if I should wear a tie, ended up not owning one." Her expression warmed. "You're exactly right, a tie would have ruined it." He glanced around. "So, what exactly is this?" "Think of it like speed dating for professionals," she said, stepping closer. "Except instead of looking for love, you're looking for connections, investors, collaborators, clients." He shoved his hands in his pockets. "And what does a guy with a toolbox and a balloon pump say to that crowd?" "You say what you mean. That's why I invited you." She led him through the crowd, introducing him to a few people: an architect looking for a reliable contractor, a boutique owner needing help with a window display installation, even a restaurateur who asked casually if Kade could build reclaimed wood benches. Each time, Elara stood beside him, not as a sponsor or a benefactor, as someone who believed in him. It was subtle, but it was there. After an hour, they wandered toward the balcony overlooking the city skyline. Kade leaned against the railing, watching the lights flicker across glass towers like stars had landed on steel. "This is a different world," he said quietly. "It's not as far from yours as you think," Elara replied. He looked at her. "You always talk like you know what people need." "No," she said. "Talk like someone who spent a long time pretending she didn't." Kade studied her face, noting how her expression shifted, calculated, then unguarded. "You didn't bring me here just to network." "No," she said. "I brought you here because I wanted to see what happened when someone real walked into a room full of people trying to sell versions of themselves. Must be fun, playing puppet master. I'm not pulling strings, Kade. I'm offering you a seat at the table. He turned toward the city again. You know, when Violet was born, I thought I had it all figured out. Had a steady job, a plan. Then she got sick at 9 months. Hospital bills wiped every saving I had. Her mom left a month later. Elara's voice dropped. I'm sorry. She's fine now, healthy, happy, but nothing's been simple since. He exhaled. I don't regret any of it, but I stopped thinking about the future a long time ago, just focused on getting through the day. Elara was quiet for a moment, then said, I respect that, but Kade, you're allowed to want more. He turned to her, really looking at her now. And you, what do you want? She hesitated. I've built a company from the ground up. I've won awards, closed deals that should have been impossible, but I go home and I eat dinner alone. I take meetings with dozens of people a week and somehow still feel like I haven't been seen in years. Kade swallowed. That's a hell of a thing to admit. You asked, she said, her voice steady. They stood in the silence that followed, the city pulsing around them. Then Kade tilted his head. I don't know what this is, he said, but I haven't stopped thinking about you since that party. Her eyes didn't flinch, then don't stop. He stepped forward, closing the space between them. If I kiss you right now, are you gonna fire me from your mentorship program? A flicker of amusement crossed her face. I don't think that would be entirely ethical. He leaned in, his lips brushing hers before either of them could second-guess it. It wasn't careful, it was honest, raw, and filled with 1,000 questions neither of them needed to ask yet. When they pulled apart, her breath caught. I should get back, she murmured, eyes still on his. I'm technically hosting. Go ahead, he said. I'll find my way. She turned, her hand brushing his as she walked away. And Kade stood there, heart pounding, wondering how the hell a birthday party had turned into this. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't scared of what came next. He wanted to see where it led. Kade stood outside the glass doors of the city courthouse, Violet's small hand wrapped tightly in his as they waited for the crosswalk light to change. A warm breeze ruffled the hem of her pink dress, and she looked up at him with wide eyes, her hair tied back in 2 neat braids. Are you nervous, Daddy? She asked quietly. He glanced down at her and gave a single nod. A little, are you? She shook her head with the confident certainty only a child could carry. She said there'd be cake. He chuckled under his breath. Then, I guess we're both going to be all right. Across the street, a silver car pulled up, and Elara stepped out, her heels clicking softly against the pavement. This time, she wasn't dressed for a boardroom or some high-profile event. She wore a soft blue blouse tucked into white trousers, her hair down, falling gently over her shoulders. She looked like the kind of woman you'd want to come home to, not someone who made billion-dollar decisions before lunch. And yet she was still all of that, and more. As she approached them, Violet let go of Kade's hand and ran to her, arms outstretched. Elara caught her midair, lifting her with ease. You look beautiful, she said, kissing Violet's cheek. Daddy said I could pick my dress. You made a perfect choice. Kade watched them, his heart aching in a way that felt almost too big for his chest. He hadn't planned on any of this. Not the mentorship, not the event, and certainly not falling for someone who lived in a world so far from his. But here they were standing on the same sidewalk, meeting each other halfway. I still can't believe you talked me into this, he said as they crossed the street together. You didn't take much convincing, Elara replied, glancing at him sideways. You just needed a push. Inside the building, they were ushered into a private room on the top floor. Sunlight streamed in through tall windows, lighting up the polished wood floors and simple white chairs arranged in neat rows. It wasn't extravagant. It didn't need to be. A judge stepped forward, greeting them with a warm smile. "Mr. Bennett, M.S. Anderson, are we ready?" Kade nodded, but Elara placed a hand gently on his arm. "Wait," she said softly. "Before we start, there's something I want to say." Everyone else faded to the edges of the room as she turned to face him. Violet stood silently between them, holding both their hands now. "I used to think love had to be complicated to be real," Elara said. "That it had to come with conditions, or strategies, or careful negotiation. But then I met you. You showed me that love can be simple, that it can be built in laughter, in shared silence, in late-night texts about nothing and early mornings with a sleepy 5-year-old in your lap." Kade swallowed hard, his eyes locked on hers. "You gave me something I didn't know I needed," she continued. "A reason to stop running, a home that isn't just a place, but a person." Violet looked up at her dad. "It's your turn." Kade let out a shaky breath. "I never thought I'd get another chance. After everything that happened, I figured love was something other people found. People with less baggage, fewer cracks." He reached for Elara's hands, his grip steady. "But then you showed up," he said. "You didn't try to fix me, you just saw me. And somehow, even with everything stacked against us, this thing between us, it started to feel like the most natural part of my life." He looked down at Violet, who was now grinning from ear to ear, then back at Elara. "You've given both of us more than I can ever repay, and if you'll have me, I want to spend every day trying." The judge cleared his throat with a smile. "I think that counts as vows." There were no guests, no photographers, no grand pronouncements. Just 3 people standing under a skylight, promising each other something no contract could define. When the ceremony ended, Elara bent down to kiss Violet's cheek. "You, young lady, are officially the flower girl and the cupcake inspector." Violet gasped, "There's cupcakes?" Elara winked, "With extra frosting, come on." They stepped onto the rooftop terrace where a single round table was set with a small white cake, 3 plates, and a bottle of sparkling cider. It wasn't an extravagant celebration. It didn't need to be. Kade pulled out a chair for Elara and helped Violet into hers. As they sat down, he glanced out over the city skyline, the same one he'd looked at from that balcony weeks ago when everything had still felt uncertain. Now it felt like home. Elara poured the cider into 3 glasses and raised hers. "To unexpected beginnings." "To blueberry muffins," Kade added. Violet giggled, "To cake." They touched glasses, the clink delicate, full of finality and new beginnings all at once. As the sun dipped behind the buildings, casting gold across the terrace, Kade leaned closer to Elara, his voice low. "You sure you're ready for a life with an unpredictable handyman and a 5-year-old who thinks glitter goes on everything?" Elara turned to him, her expression unwavering. "I've never been more sure of anything." And as Violet reached for her second cupcake and frosting smeared across her cheek, Kade kissed the woman beside him, his wife, his partner, his unexpected forever. It wasn't the life he'd imagined. It was better. A year later, the sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the newly renovated workshop in the heart of the city. The walls smelled faintly of fresh cedar, the space lined with polished workbenches, meticulously organized tools, and hand-labeled bins that made Kade's brain relax every time he walked in. A brushed steel sign above the entrance read "Bennett Craft and Build," and beneath it, in smaller letters, "ESD, by heart." He stood near the center table, adjusting the final hinge on a custom bookshelf. The piece was for a boutique hotel opening across the street, their 3rd order in 6 months. Business had taken off in a way he hadn't dared to dream before Elara. "You've got sawdust in your hair," she said from the doorway, her tone dry but affectionate. Kade grinned without looking up. "That's how you know I'm working." Elara stepped inside, heels clicking on the concrete until she reached him. She wore a tailored ivory blazer over a silk blouse, a tablet tucked under her arm. She didn't belong in a workshop, not really, but somehow, she fit more perfectly here than anywhere else. "Meeting went well?" he asked, tightening one last screw. She glanced at the tablet, then slid it onto the counter. "The foundation approved the expansion grant. We'll be able to fund 10 more small business mentorships next quarter." He wiped his hands on a cloth and leaned against the bench. "You ever stop?" "Only when I'm bribed with coffee and baked goods." "You're in luck," he said, nodding toward the kitchenette. "Violet made muffins this morning. They're purple." Elara raised an eyebrow. "Of course they are." "She said they're lavender blueberry with a secret ingredient. I wasn't allowed to know." "I'm guessing glitter." He chuckled. "Wouldn't be the first time." She set the tablet aside and walked over, her fingers brushing against his. "You've built something really incredible, you know." "Couldn't have done it without you." "You did all the hard parts." "Maybe," he said, "but you believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. That counts." Elara's gaze softened as she reached up to brush a streak of dust from his cheek. "You're not the same man I met at that birthday party." That guy didn't have any idea what he was missing. Their eyes held, and for a moment the quiet hum of the city outside disappeared. It still caught him off guard sometimes, how easily she could make the rest of the world feel irrelevant. A tiny knock echoed from the glass door. Violet stood outside, her backpack slung over one shoulder and her arms wrapped around a sketchpad nearly as big as her torso. The after-school program had walked her over, as they did every Wednesday. Kade opened the door and knelt to greet her. "Hey, kiddo, how was art club?" She beamed. "I drew our house and the shop and Mommy's office. Wanna see?" They stepped inside, and she dropped her things near the desk, flipping the sketchpad open with dramatic flair. Crayon lines curved across the page, a lopsided house with a red door, a building with sparkly stickers for windows, and stick figures labeled Daddy, Me, and Mommy, all holding hands. Elara crouched beside her, brushing a kiss against her daughter's temple. "I love it." Violet tilted her head. "Can we hang it in your office?" Kade ruffled her hair. "How about we frame it and put it right here, front and center?" As they hung the drawing, Elara's phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it but didn't reach for it. "You're not going to check it?" he asked. "Not right now." "That's new." She turned to him, slipping her arms around his waist. "I'm learning." They stood there in the quiet, Violet humming to herself as she unpacked her crayons. Kade kissed the top of Elara's head, holding her close. "I've been thinking," he said. "Dangerous." "I'm serious." "All right," she said, looking up at him, eyes curious. "I want to take you away for a weekend, just us, somewhere quiet. No phones, no board meetings, no construction schedules." She tilted her head. "Who will run the world while we're gone?" "It'll survive," he said. "Besides, I think we've earned it." She smiled. "Where are you thinking?" "There's this cabin." He pulled a folded brochure from his back pocket and handed it to her. "It's on a lake, no Wi-Fi, just a fireplace, trees, and you." She traced the edge of the paper, lips curving into something soft. "When do we leave?" "Friday. Violet's staying with my sister. She's got a whole weekend of sleepovers and pancakes planned." Elara leaned in and kissed him slowly, the kind of kiss that said everything words couldn't. "Then we leave Friday." Later that night, after dinner and bedtime stories and a particularly aggressive pillow fort, Kade stepped onto the balcony of their apartment, the one Elara had bought for them 6 months ago, high above the city, but close enough to the workshop that Kade could walk. She joined him barefoot, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. He wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. You cold. Not with you here. They stood in silence, the city glittering beneath them. It wasn't the skyline that impressed him anymore. It was the way home felt when she was in it. Kade kissed her temple. You ever think about how strange it all is, that a birthday party changed everything? Elara nodded. Sometimes the best things start when you least expect them. Would have been nice to know back then. Would you have believed it? He shook his head, probably not. She turned to face him, but you believe it now. He kissed her again, slower this time, and didn't answer with words. Inside, Violet snored softly from her blanket fort, one arm wrapped around a stuffed tiger, and the other across a sketch pad filled with hearts and stars. There were no more questions, no more missed chances, no more wondering if they belonged in each other's lives. They were already there. Together, always,